What if everything you've been taught about money was designed to keep you poor? What if your struggle to get ahead wasn't your fault, but the result of an outdated system that teaches you how to earn a living, but never how to build wealth? This is the bold idea that drives Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the most influential personal finance books ever written, authored by Robert Kiyosaki. And it starts with a simple yet powerful contrast between two father figures who shaped the author's life in completely opposite ways. One was his biological father, highly educated with a stable government job, a steady income, and a strong belief in the power of academic success. He's the man Kiyosaki calls his poor dad. The other was the father of his best friend Mike, a man who never finished high school, ran businesses, and understood how money really works. He's the man Kiyosaki refers to as his rich dad. These two men were both intelligent, hardworking, and successful in their own ways, but their beliefs about money couldn't have been more different. And it's this contrast that becomes the core of the book, because Kiyosaki learned firsthand that it's not your income that determines your wealth, it's your mindset. The story begins in Hawaii, when Robert was just a 9-year-old boy. He and his best friend Mike felt left out when they realized other kids had more spending money. So, with childhood curiosity and hunger to learn, they asked Mike's dad, Rich Dad, how they could become rich. Instead of giving them money or advice, Rich Dad put them to work. He offered them a job at one of his small grocery stores, paying them just 10 cents an hour. At first, they hated it. The work was boring, and the pay was low. But this was all part of the lesson. Eventually, Rich Dad told them, I want to teach you how to make money without being paid. Most people work for money. The rich make money work for them. This experience laid the foundation for everything Kiyosaki would later teach in this book. It was his first taste of what financial education really means, not academic theories, but practical, real-world understanding of how wealth is created. In contrast, his poor dad, the one with the college degrees, always told him to go to school, get good grades, and find a secure job. He believed in job security, pensions, and working your way up the corporate ladder. But Rich Dad believed that the path to financial freedom came from understanding assets, liabilities, and the ability to generate passive income. Let's pause and understand one of the key concepts introduced in the early chapters of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the idea of working to learn, not to earn. This is something Rich Dad emphasized repeatedly. While most people look for jobs based on salary or benefits, Rich Dad encouraged Robert to take jobs that would teach him a skill, whether it was sales, communication, or how businesses operate. He believed that if you master key skills, money will eventually follow. Poor Dad, on the other hand, was focused on job titles, promotions, and academic achievement. To him, success meant climbing the professional ladder. But despite his degrees, he struggled financially most of his life. Kiyosaki writes, My rich dad always said, the poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's the foundation of financial intelligence. He explains that most people fall into the trap of what he calls the rat race. They earn money, spend it on expenses and liabilities, then work harder to earn more, and the cycle repeats. Their income may increase, but so do their expenses and debts. So they remain stuck, regardless of how hard they work. Rich Dad taught him to focus on building assets, things that generate income, even while you sleep. This includes investments, rental properties, businesses, and intellectual property. The goal is to reach a point where your passive income exceeds your living expenses. That's when you become financially free. Here's another key lesson from the book: the importance of financial literacy. Robert Kiyosaki explains that it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you don't know how to manage it, you'll lose it. That's why so many lottery winners and professional athletes go bankrupt after earning millions. He introduces a simple concept. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out of your pocket. Most people confuse liabilities for assets. For example, many believe their house is an asset. But if your house is costing you money every month and not generating income, it's a liability. According to Rich Dad, the rich focus on buying income-generating assets, while the poor and middle class accumulate liabilities, thinking they're building wealth. Kiyosaki gives an example. If you buy a car with a loan, it looks like a status symbol, but it's taking money out of your pocket every month. Now contrast that with buying a rental property that generates more in rent than it costs to maintain. That's an asset. It's this simple shift in thinking that separates the financially educated from the financially dependent. Another unique aspect of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is how it challenges the traditional education system. Kiyosaki doesn't reject education. In fact, both his dads valued learning deeply, but he criticizes the school system for not teaching financial skills, like budgeting, investing, taxes, or how to read a financial statement. Rich Dad believed these are the real tools of wealth. He taught Robert how to read income statements and balance sheets before he even became a teenager. He believed that understanding numbers was more important than memorizing dates or formulas. The book makes it clear. The lack of financial education is one of the biggest reasons why so many people remain stuck financially. And the danger isn't just ignorance, it's fear. Poor Dad warned Robert against taking risks. He believed that debt was dangerous and that the best path was security. But Rich Dad taught him that intelligent risk, backed by education and experience, is the only way to grow. He said, "Winners are not afraid of losing, but losers are. Failure is part of the process of success." By the end of the first chapters, Kiyosaki has already made his main message clear. Don't blindly follow the traditional path. Don't assume a job will bring you financial freedom. And don't be afraid to unlearn everything you've been taught about money. Instead, start asking better questions. Learn how money works. Study assets. Understand your financial statements. And take responsibility for your financial future, because no one else will. In Chapter 2, we'll go deeper into the book's middle chapters, where Kiyosaki introduces the cash flow quadrant, breaks down the real reasons people stay poor, and explains how you can begin building wealth no matter where you are today. The most dangerous advice you can give a child in today's world is, go to school, get good grades, and find a secure job. Because what was once considered the formula for success is now the blueprint for lifelong financial struggle. In the second chapter of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki expands the lessons of his rich dad and introduces one of the book's most powerful ideas, the cash flow quadrant. But before we get to that, we must understand something crucial he lays out: why most people remain stuck in the rat race, even if they earn more money. He says it plainly. It's fear that keeps most people working at a job, fear of not paying the bills, fear of starting over, fear of being poor. But ironically, by letting fear dictate their choices, people end up staying exactly where they are, trapped in a never-ending cycle of working harder, spending more, and never feeling secure. His poor dad would often say, "I can't afford it." But Rich Dad taught Robert to instead ask, "How can I afford it?" Because your words shape your thinking, and your thinking determines your actions. This is where the cash flow quadrant comes in, a concept Kiyosaki explores deeply in his later book, but introduces here in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It divides the way people earn money into 4 quadrants. E, employee, you have a job. S, self-employed, you own a job. B, business owner, you own a system and people work for you. I, investor, your money works for you. Poor Dad spent his life in the E quadrant, working hard for a paycheck and climbing the ladder. He believed in security, and when he struggled financially, his answer was always to earn more by getting promotions or side work. Rich Dad, however, lived in the B and I quadrants. He built systems. He invested in businesses and real estate. His goal was always freedom, not just income. And here's the key lesson. True wealth isn't measured by how much you earn. It's measured by how long you could survive if you stopped working today. If your assets produce enough cash flow to cover your expenses, you're financially free, regardless of your salary or job title. Robert shares another revealing insight in this part of the book. Your house is not an asset. This shocked readers when the book was first published. After all, everyone was taught that buying a home is the ultimate symbol of financial success. But Kiyosaki breaks it down logically. If your house costs you money, through a mortgage, taxes, maintenance, and doesn't generate income, then by his definition, it's a liability, not an asset. He writes, assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money out. And that's the test. No matter how emotionally attached you are to it, if it's draining your finances every month, it's not building your wealth. Instead of accumulating liabilities, Rich Dad taught him to invest in income-producing assets, rental properties, dividend stocks, intellectual property, and businesses. Poor Dad focused on saving money and avoiding risk. Rich Dad focused on increasing cash flow and leveraging smart debt to grow wealth faster. Another core idea in this section is the difference between being busy and being productive. Poor Dad worked long hours. He was respected, reliable, and constantly busy. But he wasn't building anything that could outlast his paycheck. Rich Dad, in contrast, was strategic. He believed in learning how money flows, how taxes work, how corporations protect wealth, and how to delegate. Kiyosaki writes, "The rich buy assets, The poor only have expenses. The middle class buy liabilities they think are assets. And that's the trap. The middle class might look wealthy. Big houses, new cars, good jobs. But most of their income is tied up in liabilities, and they have to keep working to support the lifestyle. Rich Dad believed that the purpose of making money is to buy freedom. Not to look rich, not to impress neighbors, but to control your time. At this point in the book, Kiyosaki challenges the idea that being broke is the problem. He says the real issue is a lack of financial education and courage, because opportunities are everywhere, but most people don't see them, or they're too afraid to take them. He introduces an important exercise. Before buying anything expensive, ask, is this a want or a need? Will this bring me long-term value or short-term pleasure? The financially intelligent learn to delay gratification, study markets, and focus on building long-term streams of income. And that's what separates the financially literate from those who live paycheck to paycheck. By the middle of the book, Kiyosaki also emphasizes the power of learning from mistakes. His rich dad believed that failure is the best teacher, that mistakes aren't something to be ashamed of, they're something to be studied. Poor Dad, on the other hand, feared failure. He avoided risks. He taught Robert to play it safe. But Rich Dad said, if you want to be rich, you must learn to handle failure. You must learn to manage risk. This mindset alone creates two very different financial destinies. Because while Poor Dad waited for the system to reward him, Rich Dad created systems of his own. He didn't fear taxes. He studied them. He didn't fear debt. He used it strategically. He didn't avoid problems. He solved them and profited. Finally, Kiyosaki reminds us that the greatest asset we have is our mind. He writes, an investment in financial education pays the best returns. And just like physical fitness requires daily effort, financial fitness requires daily learning. That means reading books, analyzing deals, learning from mentors, tracking your income and expenses, and most of all, changing your mindset about money. Because financial freedom isn't a dream, it's a skill, and anyone can learn it if they're willing to let go of what they've been taught and start thinking like the rich dad. In Chapter 3, we'll cover the final and most transformative lessons of the book. By now, Robert Kiyosaki has made one thing clear. The difference between being rich and being poor is not about money. It's about mindset, education, and action. In the 3 and final chapters of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he strips away the last illusions people hold about money and leaves us with a simple but life-changing truth. You don't need to be a genius to become wealthy. You just need to be financially educated and courageous enough to take action. Let's break down the last key lessons that Rich Dad passed on to young Robert. Lessons that could change the course of your life if you truly internalize them. Lesson 1. Work to learn, don't work for money. Poor Dad encouraged Robert to work for a paycheck. Rich Dad encouraged him to work to gain skills. That's why early in his career, Robert took a low-paying job at Xerox, not to make money, but to learn sales and communication, 2 skills he knew would be critical for any entrepreneur. Rich Dad believed the true value of a job isn't in the salary, it's in what it teaches you. He advised young people to seek work that builds their abilities in marketing, leadership, negotiation, and investing, even if the pay is low. This is the mindset of long-term thinkers. While most chase comfort, the rich chase competence. Lesson 2. Mind your own business. This doesn't mean staying out of other people's affairs. It means literally own your own business. Rich Dad told Robert that even if you work for someone else, always focus on building something that belongs to you. That could be real estate, a side hustle, intellectual property, or a growing investment portfolio. Poor Dad only had one income, his job. Rich Dad had multiple income streams and always reinvested into his own assets. Kiyosaki writes, the rich focus on their asset columns while everyone else focuses on their income statements. Don't just work for others. Build your own empire, even if it starts small. Lesson 3. The power of financial IQ. By the end of the book, Robert Kiyosaki reveals what he believes is the most important skill for wealth creation: financial intelligence. He breaks it down into 4 key areas. 1. Accounting, understanding numbers and financial statements. 2. Investing, the science of making money with money. 3. Understanding markets, knowing how the economy, supply and demand, and trends work. 4. The law, understanding tax advantages, corporate structures, and how the wealthy legally protect their money. The average person avoids these topics because they seem complicated, but that's exactly what keeps them financially dependent. Rich Dad taught that ignorance is more expensive than education, so he urged Robert to become a student of money, to read, to ask questions, to attend seminars, to take risks and learn from them. He writes, "The more a person seeks security, the more that person gives up control over their life. Financial freedom, on the other hand, gives you back that control, but it requires you to know how money works." Lesson 4. Overcoming obstacles. Even with the right knowledge, most people still don't act. Why? According to Kiyosaki, there are 5 main reasons people fail to become rich. 1. Fear. Fear of losing money keeps people playing it safe. 2. Cynicism. Listening to others' doubts and negativity. 3. Laziness. Choosing comfort over growth. 4. Bad habits. Spending before saving, not tracking finances. 5. Arrogance. Thinking you already know enough. Rich Dad taught that the only way to overcome fear is through action and experience. Yes, you will lose money. Yes, you will make mistakes. But that's how you learn, and that's how you win. Because the real enemy of success isn't failure, it's inaction. The final challenge. Start now. In the last part of the book, Kiyosaki leaves readers with a challenge. He doesn't want you to just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He wants you to live it. That means starting small, but starting today. Begin tracking your income and expenses. Learn how to read a balance sheet. Spend less on liabilities and more on assets. Take a course on investing. Read another book about finance. Talk to someone who owns a business or invests in real estate. You don't need millions to begin. You need mindset. You need hunger. And you need the belief that you can learn this. Because nobody is born financially smart. But anyone can become financially smart with the right education and consistent action. And remember this, the single most powerful asset we all have is our mind. If it is trained well, it can create enormous wealth. So train it, challenge it, and most importantly, don't waste it. You've now heard the full summary of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the most important financial books of the 21st century. You've seen the difference between a mindset of scarcity and a mindset of abundance. Now it's your move. If you found value in this video, help us share this message with the world. Like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel so you never miss content that challenges how you think and helps you build a smarter, freer future. Because the journey to financial freedom starts with the first lesson and the courage to keep learning.